Coming up, we speak with a tribal leader who's not just stepping down, but stepping up for the environment. Then we dive into the world of opera with a Native woman redefining storytelling. Those interviews, plus headlines, are ahead on the ICT Newscast.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.
Support for the ICT Newscast with Lelelot Chavez comes from the Arizona PBS studios in Phoenix at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communications at Arizona State University.
Amidawa Hopa. Thank you for joining us. I am Lelelot Chavez. 6 U.S. senators are calling for the release of Native American activist Leonard Peltier. Last week, they sent a letter to Attorney General Merrick Garland urging for the compassionate release of Peltier, who has been in prison for the last 49 years. Peltier was convicted in 1977 of murdering 2 FBI agents on the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. For decades, his case has gained national attention, with supporters saying there was evidence of misconduct by prosecutors as well as due process violations. The senators wrote that Garland can grant the nearly 80-year-old's release because of his, quote, advanced age and deteriorating health. In California, a new program will guarantee income for Black and Native American families who are in need. Families in Sacramento County are now guaranteed a basic income of $725 a month. The pilot program was unanimously approved by the county's Board of Supervisors and was created in an effort to assist Black and Native American families experiencing poverty. Data of who gets the payments and how the money is spent will be tracked in order to better refine the project as it progresses. Moving internationally, an indigenous land advocate and leader from Colombia was recently assassinated. Carmelina Yul Pavi was shot in the face amid an armed attack by the largest dissident group of the extinct Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia. Pavi's granddaughter, with tears in her eyes, recounted how she had tried to hide her grandmother during the attack but was unsuccessful.
I look to see where I can hide you, and I hid her. I then went around the outside of the house, and they were shooting at the bottom also. I thought, I'm not taking my grandmother around here. They'll kill her. And I went into the back, and there was a laundry room. I measured that if I fit, she fit too. I said, this is the hiding place for my grandmother. When I went running to bring her, my brother was screaming. They killed my grandmother. I didn't believe it because they had left her there not long ago. When I got there, she was lying there.
The land defender's death sparked political unrest, causing Colombian President Gustavo Petro to revoke peace agreements with the rebel group. In Canada, the Indigenous Screen Office has received permanent federal funding for its operations. Launched in 2017, funding for the organization was set to expire in April of this year, but a petition to the government, signed by hundreds of people, advocated for federal support. The Indigenous Screen Office is the only Indigenous-led audio and visual institution in Canada that supports First Nations, Métis, and Inuit storytellers. The office will receive $65 million from the government over the next 5 years, starting sometime this year. The Environmental Protection Agency announced last week the comprehensive ban of asbestos. The ban will slowly go into effect for some products in the next 6 months, and others were given a transitional period of 15 years. A partial ban was enacted decades ago, but the fibers are still being used today in chlorine bleach, brake products, and water purification processes. This deadly carcinogen has become one of the main contributors to mesothelioma in Native Americans and has no cure. This natural fire-resistant fiber was once used for all aspects of daily life. Fawn Sharp has served as president of the National Congress of American Indians and president of the Quinault Indian Nation, while also working to forge solutions to the climate change crisis. She sat down with ICT's Mark Trahant and says that she'll be stepping back from tribal leadership to devote more time to her climate and other work.
Fawn Sharp, thank you for joining us on the newscast.
Yes, thank you. Siakuya.
I want to talk to you about the arc of your career.
Yes, that arc definitely began before I could even remember. I grew up here on the Quinault Reservation. My grandparents fished for a living. I knew as an 8-year-old what treaty abrogation meant. That inspired me to want to become an attorney to defend our treaty rights. No one in my family had ever gone to college at that point, and so early in those years, my mother worked as a recording secretary for the Northwest Indian Fish Commission, and so it was my job to hit the play and the record button, and I traveled throughout the Pacific Northwest listening to our tribal leaders talk about what was at stake in the Bolt decision.
The 1974 case that affirmed treaty rights for fishing and hunting and helped steer you to a legal career.
I mentioned my grandfather. He told me years ago that a law degree is a social tool, it's a political tool, and it's an economic tool. And I feel like I've spent an entire career, multiple careers, advancing those basic principles. And I've lived decades of public service. And so looking at the last prong of economic advancements, that's a tool I've been gifted, and so I do see that an emerging role for us to not only advance tribal interests and tribal sovereignty in a political sense, but we have an entire world of opportunity, a global economy, resources and access that we now have that we historically just didn't have. What that means for me is I'm at a place in time where I've prepared my entire lifetime for the next chapter of my life. And what that means for me at this point is I'm not going to be seeking re-election here at the Quinault Nation. I've run 6 terms prior to becoming an elected official. I served over a decade as the reservation attorney in the Attorney General's office here at Quinault. Elders told me, Fawn, if you want to come back to serve the nation, it's going to be so important for you to go outside to gain experience. And so I worked at a federal level, I worked at a state level. I saw the inner workings of government at the highest levels. I brought that knowledge back and I applied it as an elected official. And I can honestly say for 6 terms, 18 years, I served every bit to the very best of my abilities, upholding and honoring an oath of office that I took so dearly. And now I get to take all of that knowledge, all of that experience and wisdom and apply it in a way where I know we have to go. I know we have to be a global player politically, economically, socially. And so that's where I'm at right now.
And part of that might mean working with other tribes.
Yes, absolutely. Working with other tribes, I think there are a number of tribes that are actively working to capture carbon. They're actively working on efforts to do the things that we know is necessary. There's trillions of metric tons of carbon in the atmosphere. We have to capture and store some of that. We have to look at orphan methane gas leaks all across just Oklahoma, for example. There's thousands of methane leaks. And so scientists are saying we're not going to get to target just by reducing emissions. We actually have to capture and store those emissions. So as we work internally to do things like we are here at Quinault, restoring our salmon, moving our villages to higher ground, there's an entire globe that's in crisis, that's in physical crisis, and we have to do all we can to take out carbon, to capture and store methane fuels, because it is a ticking time bomb. And so other tribes are doing that, and I'm just excited to take the knowledge and wisdom that I've gained over the years and apply it in a way that creates an explosion of economic growth across Indian country. And I know when you look at things like tribal gaming and the ability that tribes have been able to advance, being leading employers in their county and in their states, an economic force, the scale of the growth that's in front of us is like tribal gaming on steroids. And it's an opportunity for us to have influence domestically here inside the United States, but also globally. and it energizes me, it inspires me. And so when I do go to other parts of the world and I see others so desperate for solutions, and I have a conversation with somebody from Dow Industries of Europe, for example, and talking about ecosystems. You don't have to recreate those in a lab. You could come out to Quinault and see from glacier to ocean a river system in which there's no, there's no development. And so I'm after taking our message globally, but just as important, inviting CEOs, investors out to Indian country, because when you do business with us, it's a much different process.
Fawn Sharp, thank you very much.
Thank you. Siakuya.
March is Women's History Month. To celebrate the women who have made a difference in our lives and in the lives of their native nations, here's an encore presentation of an interview from our archives. Lelelot Lanzalotti is pushing the boundaries of storytelling through opera. As a recipient of the Shift Grant from the Native American Arts and Cultures Foundation, this Pulitzer Prize finalist is redefining the narrative. Shirley Snavy unveils how Lanzalotti delves into Hawaiian history, language, and the complexities of imprisonment to create mesmerizing works of art.
Lili'u is a new opera set in 1895 when the last queen of Hawaii, Liliuokalani, was imprisoned in Iolani Palace for the better part of a year. She was imprisoned in the palace for allegedly supporting movement to take back the kingdom after the overthrow that had happened 2 years previous. During this time when she was imprisoned in the palace, she wasn't able to communicate with people very much, but her captors thought that there were a few things that were kind of like craft that they felt were innocuous. Working on a quilt with her companions that was called the crazy quilt, and that's a specific style of quilting from that era. Working with flowers, getting flowers every day from people outside that were being brought in, and composing. The opera itself is about Indigenous resilience and honoring Liliuokalani's ability to move forward and preserve language and culture through her own music. And so I wanted to make sure that as I build this opera project, that's also creating sustainability and resilience for Native artists.
The subject of your project, The Queen, is a storied life, and we know quite a bit about her. I mean, even me here in Nebraska, I know who she is and the legacy that she's led. Why was this important for you to tell her story?
I was interested in telling it specifically in this way as an opera because Liliuokalani was writing an opera. She was a composer and she expressed herself through music. And especially in the specific period of her life that I'm writing about in the opera, the imprisonment, she was able to communicate with the outside world, and she was able to survive and continue with composition, with this artistic practice that she had. I wanted to tell it in this way to honor the kind of expression that she was, the medium of expression, even though my style of writing is different, and to kind of also shed light on how incredible her work was as an artist, and how she had at the time practiced radical Indigenous contemporaneity with her own compositions. And so I think showing how that through thread and showing the way that she was able to do that with her compositions honors her work in, I feel, a true way with her own words. That was really important to me in terms of uplifting her work through this other lens, in this contemporary lens, and showing how contemporary and how radical it was that she was combining these styles, combining this kind of Western hymn style and contrapuntal writing with chant and Hawaiian ways of constructing kauna and meaning into songs. Every day when she got flowers from her supporters, they had hidden little pieces of fabric in the flowers or wrapped them in the newspaper of the day and then wrapped that again so that people wouldn't notice that it was the current news. In this way, she was able to stay abreast of what was going on in the world and know if her people were safe. I'm really honored to be one of the Shift awardees this year in partnership with Te Ao Mana, which is a dance group based in New York City, but founded by leaders of Pacific heritage. And so what we were doing in partnering was just, they're so involved in the community and they're already doing so much in the community and connected to other Indigenous communities in the New York area. And so I wanted to bring them on because Tane, or Anthony Ayu, who's one of the co-founders of Te Ao Mana, is a really gorgeous dancer and choreographer. What we ended up submitting and what we will be doing for our Shift project is that Te Ao Mana will not just be the dancers for the opera with Tane doing the choreography, but they will also be a community partner, so that in the time leading up to the opera, there'll be free dance classes for the community, and there'll be different opportunities for community to come together with the idea that leading up to the opera, we have these other community offerings so that the experimental opera at the end is the big party that the community gets to come to. She was able to write these songs that sounded like they were about the beautiful flowers or they were about a beloved person, but in fact they were through kauna, or the hidden meaning, expressing her love for her people. And she says in one of them that was published in a Hawaiian newspaper, you know, the one refrain of my heart is for the love of my people.
Shirley Snavy, ICT News.
Language revitalization is a priority for many tribes across Turtle Island. It's what ties them to their sense of place and identity. Almost 10 million people identify as American Indian or Alaska Native, but only 250,000 speak their Indigenous language. ICT wants to do its part in perpetuating the beauty of these Native languages. That's why we've added a regular feature to the newscast. Today, let's learn Passamaquoddy from the Wabanaki Nation.
Upjudge. Upjudge. I'll see you again. Upj means again. Upjudge is I'll see you again, because there is no such thing as goodbye in the Passamaquoddy language.
U.S. Fellowships grants $50,000 in unrestricted awards to recognize excellence across the country. This year, many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island were honored. ICT's Pacey Smith-Garcia has this interview with fellowship winner Cristobal Martinez.
Thank you very much for joining me today. You are a 2024 United States Artist Fellowship winner. Can you tell me a bit about how you're feeling right now?
I'm very excited to have been included as part of the 2024 cohort of United States Artists Fellows. It's a good feeling, a very good feeling. It's also very humbling to have been selected to be part of such a brilliant cohort. And so I feel really humbled by this. And I'm really excited. It's considered to be an important honor in the field of art and in the arts in general. In order to be considered for a United States Artist Fellowship, An artist has to be nominated by someone. And my understanding is that the nominations are oftentimes by previous fellows of the award. You have to be nominated first, and then you're invited to apply. I applied within the category of media art and applied as an installation artist. They wanted to understand what motivates my artistic practice, and they wanted to get a sense of why this fellowship would be particularly useful for me at this point in time in my career. And so it's nice to be recognized for my contributions to the field, but even really importantly, my contributions as an artist in the collective post-commodity, which really means a lot to me.
Can you talk a little bit about what post-commodity is and what they do?
Post-commodity is an interdisciplinary art collective. It's an indigenous collective. The artists in the collective have shifted throughout the years, but the collective is really imagined and envisioned to communicate narratives of indigenous self-determination. We do so with an awareness of economic systems and political systems and social systems. We have to negotiate in a way that allows us to be able to have generative conversations in the public about indigenous self-determination and sovereignty.
You are Hanisaro. We were talking about this a bit before the interview, but could you talk a little bit more about where the Hanisaro comes from and what that means to you and your work?
To enter into as a member of the group in 2010, at that point in time in 2010, there was from my perspective, a specific need or maybe even personal desire to begin to communicate out the idea of a mestizo within the borderlands, within the southwestern United States, specifically in terms of my lived experience. But American peoples are calling for a greater degree of accountability and specificity. And so I started being very specific about what I mean by my mestizo background, in that I'm specifically Genisaro, and I am from the community of Alcalde, New Mexico, with my ancestors from throughout northern New Mexico who are Genisaro. And the Genisaro and Genis people are coming from communities, specific communities within northern New Mexico, mixed heritage. And the Genisaros in northern New Mexico have ancestors who are Pueblo, Apache, Comanche, and then also Tlaxcalan and various other indigenous peoples from south of the U.S.-Mexico border. We're tied to and interwoven into the cultural fabric of northern New Mexico and southern Colorado. There were, within Genisaro society, there were curanderos, there were medicine people, there were warriors, there were farmers. How is being Genisaro, how does that shape your art? And for me, being Genisaro is the very lens that through which I see the world. Being Genisaro it's a very unique worldview, and it is a worldview that is whole, but it's a place where knowledge syncretizes. So I I oftentimes see myself as a diplomat. And as a diplomat, I try to bring people together, and especially like as an artist, identifying sites of conflict or sites of controversy. And I try to use my Genis knowledge and the Genisaro aspects of Genisaro tradition to encourage people to be peaceful. Genisaros are complicated and complex people. And they are a community, strongly community-oriented people with very, very strong ties beneath their feet.
Val Martinez, 2024 United States Artist Fellow. Congratulations on your win.
Thank you so much.
That is a slice of our Indigenous world. For all the latest, visit ictnews.org. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.